Every schoolchild knows that testing is a part of the process for learning. Insights and wisdom are provided through times of instruction, then comes the testing. Most of us dread the exams because we fear that we have not thoroughly learned the lessons about which we are being tested. The brother of Jesus, James, said that we should think of testing as a joyful thing because it is the culmination of perseverance in learning life lessons, and it is the process by which we become mature and complete. See James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. He added this, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously without finding fault." That's James 1:5. This fall, the voters of Virginia will face a time of testing. Referenda questions will be included on the ballot dealing with biblical issues of abortion and same-sex marriage. And the test questions are written with trick language to catch the unsuspecting voter. But these contemporary questions are on the ballot, and they will measure the degree to which we have learned God's lessons and His standards. Some people will refuse to vote. By cutting the exam, they will contribute to the failure rate of the electorate. God assigns governments to people. That's Romans 13:1. He has given us a representative form of government, a republic, in which the laws and cultural standards are set by the very people who are being governed. The Declaration of Independence put it this way: the government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. Those who qualify to vote but choose not to are like the wicked and lazy servant who failed to put the master's assets to work in the parable of the talents. Read Matthew 25:14 through 30. Those who do answer God's call to vote will be influencing government. They will serve as salt and light, affecting our laws. Read Matthew 5:13 and 14. Exam questions are sometimes written in such a way as to require discernment and wisdom simply to understand the question. The ballot questions for Virginians turn out to be a good example of that. The abortion question on the ballot poses the question, should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to, 1, protect the freedom to make personal decisions about prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, birth control, abortion, miscarriage management, and fertility care. 2, protect doctors, nurses, and patients from being punished for these decisions. And 3, allow for restrictions on access to abortion during the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, except when the patient's health is at risk or pregnancy cannot survive. The proposed legislation provides actually no restrictions on abortions during the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and under the current law of Virginia, those things are already permitted. And the language listing doctors, nurses, and patients as being protected is a non-exclusive list. The underlying legislation prohibits any adverse action against any individual for aiding or assisting another individual in exercising such individual's right to reproductive freedom, i.e. abortion. So, for example, a pimp who helps one of his street workers with an attempted coat hanger abortion would be protected from prosecution under this proposed constitutional amendment. The referendum question regarding same-sex marriage is likewise rife with trick language. Virginia's Constitution currently provides a biblical definition of marriage, describing marriage as between one man and one woman. The referenda question on the ballot this fall asks this question: should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to require equal treatment under law of any lawful marriage between two people, regardless of sex, gender, or race of such persons, and repeal the current provision defining marriage as only a union between a man and a woman. Same-sex marriage has been legal since the Obergefell decision 11 years ago, and biracial marriage has been the law of the land since the Supreme Court's decision in Loving versus Virginia, and that was decided 59 years ago. That was in 1967. So what's really going on here? Why is the constitutional amendment being promoted? Victoria Cobb, the president of the Virginia Family Foundation, sheds some light on that question. She explains that the amendment would enshrine gender ideology into our state constitution, threatening girls' safety and sports, as well as basic religious liberties. Separating the terms sex and gender in the Virginia Constitution would become a Trojan horse, delivering surprise consequences to an unsuspecting electorate. In contemporary parlance, sex refers to physical characteristics such as chromosomes and reproductive organs, while gender is defined as a social and cultural identity of people, for example, those who claim to be non-binary. By listing sex and gender as two separate constitutional rights, a new protected legal classification would be created. Just as discrimination on the basis of sex is prohibited, discrimination on the basis of gender would be the new target, and recognition of a constitutional right based on gender would open the door for biological males, for example, identifying as females in order to freely access women's bathrooms and girls' locker rooms. Although the law has long been settled regarding same-sex marriage and biracial marriage, the proposed amendment is a means by which to slip in a new constitutionally protected class based on gender identity. Moreover, there are growing sentiments among legal experts that the federal court's redefinition of the word marriage, which traditionally referred to the union between one man and one woman, is vulnerable to attack because marriage was not among the enumerated powers that were conferred specifically on the federal government. The proposed marriage amendment is an attempt to deviate from the biblical-based traditional definition of marriage. Notably, a provision that would have exempted pastors from being required to officiate at same-sex weddings has been removed from that legislation. So as we face this time of testing, consider these questions for introspection, if you will. Question number 1, as Christians, what, if any, responsibility do we have to vote in elections? Question number 2, does a biblical perspective have any legitimate role in deciding political issues? And question 3, why would God provide testing like the Virginia referenda questions? Christianity was never meant to be separated from everyday living. Jesus promised that he's with us always, Matthew 28:20. We are directed to pray continually and pray about everything, see 1 Thessalonians 5:17 and 18. And the bedrock principle articulated by Jesus made it our solemn duty to be salt, retarding degradation in our society, and light, shining God's illumination into the dark places of everyday life. See Matthew 5:13 and 14. God provides governments for the good of people. Read Romans 13:1 through 5. The form of government that God provided for this country requires participation by each of us. We control the government's authority through the voting process and by the limits imposed on government in this country. Exercising our civic duty involves application of biblical perspective. That's the test for Christians that's coming up in this election. Are we living out the teachings of Jesus? Are we applying the standards that are set forth in God's inspired word? These are among the principles being tested for believers in the referendum vote. Study his word, seek his wisdom, exercise your God-given right to vote, and demonstrate lessons learned from God.